This is an upload I've been meaning to catch up on for a little bit here, talking about some new fight announcements that are going to be taking place throughout the summer of 2025. We haven't even seen Oliveira versus Topuria yet, or gotten the Islam Makhachev announcement for his fight with Jack Della Maddalena at 170, and things are already looking up to be amazing for the summer. The first order of business before we talk about other fights that I want to discuss is going to be talking about a short notice fight that's going to be replacing two fights that fell through for this weekend: Billy Goff versus Ramiz Brahimaj. Ramiz Brahimaj was scheduled to fight Oban Elliott on short notice, and he had visa issues. Billy Ray Goff was supposed to fight Seokyeon Ko, and he also had visa issues. So now we get to watch the B side of both fights compete in what is going to be guaranteed a mid-off. The other two fighters who couldn't make it to the States for this card are going to be rescheduled to fight in Azerbaijan on June 21st. That is going to be a fight night card happening there. To break down the new matchups, since I couldn't get around to it in the predictions video because it just wasn't made yet. As I talked about before, Billy Ray Goff's striking is pretty miserable. He gets hit a ton, and he hasn't the skill to prevent all of his fights from turning into a bloody mess, both literally and figuratively. All of his fights are wars, and he doesn't really want them to be, it looks like, or that's not his intent to make them wars, and they just end up becoming that. Brahimaj isn't technical enough to not brawl either, and he actually does some of his best work in these 50-50 exchanges between his opponents. Granted, they're not too powerful, and they can knock him out, and they probably will, but if he's fighting like a Mickey Gall, he's going to stand right in the phone booth with that dude, and he's going to throw hooks at him, and he'll eat shots on his chin to trade his own, and if it's a guy like that, he hits harder, so he's probably going to knock him out. And that's why I'm thinking if Ramiz Brahimaj is the aggressor to start this fight, he can put a pace on Billy Goff to break him so that he doesn't care about following his game plan anymore. Just like in the Trey Waters fight, the same thing happened to him. He hits a point of taking damage where he stops listening to his coach and solely focuses on surviving. The reason why Ramiz Brahimaj's fights get so crazy is because of his defense style. He doesn't really slip a lot of shots or use head movement pretty much at all. It's all catch and shoot and parry. So he's just taking one and giving one most of the time. He ends up getting hit a lot through this style of defense, and he has to go into the fire to get shots back because he ends up going down in fights just trying to catch and shoot, and if he's missing whenever he's firing and the guy is landing flush, as he's moving into the later rounds 2 and 3, his only option as he's losing rounds is going to be to just stand right in the fire and throw his hardest punches at whoever he's fighting to see if they can take it or not. And sometimes he wins big. I think he probably will this time, and he may win a decision, but I think there's a pretty high likelihood that he ends up knocking out Billy Ray Goff just because of the styles. So I just wanted to talk about that because I don't want to leave any stone unturned as far as covering the sport in my predictions for the events. I hate whenever fights fall through. Whenever fights get added, I always make sure to double back and at least make notice of the fact that this is a new matchup happening on a card that we're going to be watching soon. So moving right along, we have Aaron Pico versus Movsar Evloev. I might have the Rat Pack hating on me again for this, but I've already seen the MMA Guru and the Lucas Tracy video about what they think about this. So whenever people start using their talking points in the comment section, I'm not going to debate with them. I'm just going to send Sybau, Sybau. And if you don't know what that means, you can Google it when the time comes. But I'm just letting you know right now. Why are we all of a sudden going to act like we care about Movsar Evloev's career? I thought we were all still mad at this guy for robbing Arnold Allen because he was grabbing the floor. And it was before the rule change. And that was the reason why the rules were changed. And we're like, damn, I really hate Movsar Evloev for the fact that he beat Arnold Allen that way. And if those knees were legal, that was a TKO sequence, and Arnold Allen was going to win that fight. Before UFC 315, all of us had been wanting to see this guy sleep so badly for being boring, and we all hoped to see him as far away from the title as possible. The meme was like, yeah, Movsar Evloev kind of deserves this belt, but we're going to just not give it to him because he sucks, and it's not fun to watch him fight. So when did that narrative change? And I think it was right after UFC 315, whenever Volkanovski hopped on the mic and he said, well, I reckon Movsar's gonna be next. This was right after he beat up Diego Lopez, and I guess we're just going with this now, and we feel wronged by the fact that that's not what's happening next. But my guy, Aljamain Sterling earns title shots. Diego Lopez from 2 years ago earns title shots. Dan Ige from 3 years ago earns title shots. My buddy was a state level wrestler in the high school that we went to in California. Aaron Pico is also from California and is a state level wrestler here. My friend saw him at a tournament, and it was like the state tournament final, and he technically fell his opponent in only a couple of minutes. And in wrestling, that means that he won by 15 points, and he stopped the match. And I'm making note of this because, yes, he is good. People are like, wow, this is just some random Bellator taken. It's not like Michael Chandler. It's kind of like Michael Chandler. He doesn't have the display footage against the tenured veterans who then went into the UFC and had long careers there, but he has a lot of ability. He's a great wrestler. And before you yuppies get in the comment section talking about, oh, well, American wrestling, it's not the best base for MMA, mountain wrestling is definitely better, it's kind of still like, that's kind of just a theory right now, saying that it's not the best or it's not competitive. People are going as far as to say that it's bad just because of Bo Nickel and stuff. But he didn't even take time to adapt it at all to the sport. So you can't go out on a limb and just say that collegiate style wrestling is ineffective for MMA because certain guys couldn't make it work. That's just like saying that Muay Thai doesn't work in MMA because Mayra Buena Silva is bad at it. Aaron Pico has some really good knockout highlights as well in Bellator. They're against, yes, tomato cans. But that's all you really have until you get to the UFC. So they're throwing him into the deep waters against Movsar Evloev, but I think he's going to do just fine. He's not like a bantamweight who's trying to make it work at a higher weight class. I will assume that he possesses the same skill in wrestling as someone like Aljamain Sterling, just based off of what he has on tape and what my buddies told me. Aside from this, he looks to be a better puncher than Arnold Allen with serious KO ability. He has Fighting Nerds-esque striking in some of the mechanics that he demonstrates. He also whips this lead hook like Ferreira. It's a very bullwhip-ish motion, and it just chins people. He has this one clip of it knocking this guy out. Again, this guy was probably making airplane engines before he came to fight in the octagon, or delivering milk jugs to people's houses. But why are we immediately nixing a new prospect entering the mix to replace a guy who we are on record as not being interested in watching fight? The best outcome is Evloev getting spilled. We've seen his fights and we know that we don't like those fights. Pico can establish himself as a top contender at featherweight, and we can push him towards the belt if he looks dangerous. Volk and Yair isn't confirmed, so I don't understand why people are freaking out over this fight like it's already been made. And even if it is, this is where people are going to get mad at me, dude. Volk has a chicken McNugget belt. That's not a real title. He did not beat Ilia Topuria for it. So this is not an extension of his title reign before he went up and challenged Islam Makhachev even the first time. And especially not after the second time either. Because a bunch of things happened, even to him at 145 while he was champion, that makes it so now this belt is kind of tainted. Ilia Topuria could get drunk tonight and be like, and call Dana and be like, look, I don't really feel like it. Let me go back down to 145. And he could take that belt back whenever he wanted, is what I'm saying. It makes no sense for him to ever do something like this right now, but he did not beat the champion for that belt. That is a Mickey Mouse title. So whoever he defends it against, who cares, bro? And the Yair fight, that was an action-packed matchup. It did not make it to the last bell. And I think that we're guaranteed the same thing in a rematch just because of the styles. And people are worried about, oh no, Yair could maybe be a guy who could beat Volk on some fluke stuff. And if it does happen, why do you not care more for the moment than Volk holding onto a belt that, whenever we get into semantics and break things down to a microcosm, isn't really his? So I don't get it. People I feel like are just clamoring to be mad at stuff. This makes me mad. Yair versus Volk 2 makes me mad. Dude, watch your free event and eat your popcorn and smoke your weed and drink your beers and fucking shut up. Dude, I can't stand this, bro. I can't take it. There's so much negativity. You guys don't understand. If you're so negative about the sport all of the time, there eventually will be no sport. And you can blame Dana, but we're the guys who drive the whole machine along. So whenever we withdraw our interest, that's whenever the whole thing dies. So if people have convinced you to just stop caring at this point, that's not going to revitalize the sport. All you're doing is withdrawing your interest. and making it so that all of this is inaccessible at a certain point if the sport shrinks because nobody gives a fuck. And yeah, we all love the UFC and we're passionate about it, but all of this naysaying is not healthy. So dude, Pico versus Evloev. The UFC is the best organization in the world. This guy has not been fighting UFC level fighters. Movsar's last win was against Aljamain Sterling. He is a safer pick in this fight. I will pick Aaron Pico to win just because it would be cool for a guy who isn't the same four dudes we've been watching at featherweight reach for this belt. And Volk Yair too. Chill out. Yeah, he could definitely rob a win, and I honestly only care about seeing violence, so I don't care if that does happen. Fine, whatever. Yair Rodriguez as champion would be kind of lame. I would take a brutal knockout scored by either of these guys. Volk probably just dominates him again, though. So everyone is just wetting their pants over the fact that this fight may be scheduled. What are they tripping for from the angle of, like, no, let's protect Volk's legacy? The only thing that's produced from this is his record containing one title defense that doesn't really make sense. Whenever people do deeper diving into this second title reign, they're just going to understand that, like, Ilia Topuria is the champion still. If it were even just 2 years ago, Ilia Topuria would be able to hold one belt and then challenge for another belt and arrest one division and not compete there while they set up things at the higher one. And now they're just trying something different now. Ilia Topuria is still a champion of featherweight, bro. This one's going to be going down on July 26th in Abu Dhabi, by the way. So I'm going to definitely be watching out for whoever else is on that card, because whenever they go to Abu Dhabi in the middle of the summer, those are usually very good events. I think that we got Aliskerov getting knocked out by Robert Whittaker on the last one. Very fun stuff every time. Leon Edwards versus Michael Morales is going to be the next fight that we're going to talk about. It's happening at UFC 320 on September 13th, 2025. Leon Edwards is going to make the pain scream at this event. I kind of like how they're building up Miles Morales. They're not giving him an insane amount of hype. I think a lot of it is because he doesn't speak English at all. They're purely promoting him through his performances, and he's performing. I enjoy how they're not platforming him the same way that we have contenders like Joaquin Buckley, Ian Gary, Sean Brady, and even Leon Edwards too, that we're growing accustomed to seeing at 170. What's going to happen is fans and fighters are going to end up sleeping on Michael Morales because he's unknown, and he's going to keep on fighting big fights and winning them by KO until people must pay attention. And people understand that there's a lot of stake to be gained in having beaten him because he is undefeated. So whenever you can claim one of these records, it matters a lot. But Michael Morales is only getting better. And he's only getting larger, it seems, too, whenever he was insanely more massive than Gilbert Burns in the octagon whenever they're fighting together. Leon Edwards fights like an incomplete version of Michael Morales, though. Whenever you do look at the two styles, the strategy of the jab low kick is prevalent to start the fights for both of these fighters, but Leon Edwards doesn't end up doing much more than that. Michael Morales is a workhorse, though, and he has the gift of a massive frame to make the same style that Leon uses whenever he does end up opening up a lot more effective, so that he feels more emboldened to get inside and repeatedly rip these very devastating combos that both of them are capable of. Morales will find ways to make his game work and is very creative to shift between grappling and striking sequences on a dime. We saw Neil Magny was trying to press Michael Morales up against the cage. They were reversing positions on each other inside of the clinch, and Michael Morales just decided that he was done with it and spun an elbow, and it clapped Neil Magny, and that was the beginning of the end sequence. Aside from this, we always see Michael Morales display that he will grapple in his fights whenever he has to, and he'll commit to grappling to get the fight to the ground to secure a submission, and he'll game plan and do everything accordingly so that he can end with this result. Leon mixes it up pretty well. He'll shoot takedowns in his fights, and he'll even get them too, but he doesn't control as well as Michael Morales does because he gets less respect from fighters, so they'll take more chances against him in the striking and in the grappling, and that's just because he's less dangerous than Michael Morales. Leon may be motivated to not go out like a Mark Sucka after his last performances, and he might push back into Morales on the feet instead of playing range and just getting teed off on. That would be his only chance, is to get in close, because Michael Morales, he can box with you at kicking range. For normal 170s, their kicking range is Michael Morales' boxing range, which is a very cool thing that he has going for him. Even if you look at the length of his torso compared to Leon Edwards in those side-by-side pictures, he just looks like a larger human, and that's just because he is. And Leon Edwards isn't a small 170, he's a medium-sized or even a larger one. But in this fight, experience is going to be his only advantage, and he's getting older. Michael Morales is 25. So all members of Leon Edwards' era are getting replaced. Him and Usman are the last ones left. And it comes down to how they perform against Morales and Buckley. And I'm always going to pick those young and fresher fighters over the old dogs that we've seen go through the grinder and put on their good performances in the past. I'm not sure if they're competing with these types of evolved fighters in the modern day. Aliskerov versus Ferreira is going to be the next fight. On July 19th, 2025, UFC 318 is going to happen. We're going to watch Ikram Aliskerov fight Bruno Ferreira, who may be another Brazilian fighter who can't handle mountain men with V's in their last names. Fresh off of a devastating KO over RoboCop, Bruno Ferreira was immediately chinned by Nursultan Rozaboev. He bounces back with 2 round 1 KOs over Dustin Stoltzfus and Phil Hawes, then gets subbed by Abus in a fight he was winning on the feet. I just remember watching him getting choked at the end of this fight and being like, how? How did this happen to you? Because he was so ahead at certain points. And that's what's funny, because Bruno always has the ability to finish a fight in the first round, but he always has the ability to be wrestled if you're from the steps. Aliskerov is going to have that working in his favor, but he also has the ability to be finished in round 1 and in general, but he can wrestle and finish fights in round 1 too. And I think this is going to be his first fair matchup in the UFC if we're talking about on-level matchmaking for Ikram Aliskerov. He beat Phil Hawes and Warley Alves in the first round by KO, and then he fought Robert Whittaker, and he lost in the first round by KO, and then he fought Andre Muniz. And so I feel like he had 3 easy fights, 3 super easy fights for a guy like him with his skill set, and then 1 really hard fight. So this is going to be in the middle of all of those opponents, Bruno Ferreira. Aliskerov just doesn't seem to have much for strikers with a potent KO threat, and he stays way too disciplined in trying to be wittier instead of going for it like he would against a Phil Hawes or a Warley Alves. He only seems to get in there for finishes against level 5 crooks at middleweight. And he was gun-shy against Rob, but that was a huge step up for him again. So we can see the same gun-shyness out of Bruno Ferreira if you do wrestle him. He has decent cardio for how explosive he is, but he will allow himself to be submitted if you are committed to taking him down across 3 rounds. In this fight, Bruno Silva probably folds up and gets choked again, but if he pulls off a knockout, I'm going to be so elated. The next one, Mckinney versus Borschev. This is going to happen at UFC 317 on the same card as Ilia Topuria versus Charles Oliveira, June 28th. I can't wait, man. I like Terrence McKinney. That's my boy, man. And I actually Instagram DM'd him before the Damir Hadzovic fight. It was right whenever he got it announced. And I was like, dude, you got a new contract signed. I want to see you start knocking people out again. And he was like, yeah, dude, that's the plan. And he was, prayer hands, bro. That's my boy. Talking about God first, man. That's real. He's tapped in. I really have been celebrating the fact that he's been getting his career back on track following a TKO win over Damir Hadzovic. As I'd mentioned before, he did sign this new contract, and they're building him up like they should have at the start. He was just an overachiever with the way that he knocked out Matt Frivola in like 6 seconds. And he probably was asking for steps up in competition that he received before he was fully ready for it. And that's the reason why things have been going the way that they've been going for him. He said in the comment section a few months ago that he had got his wisdom teeth removed, and that improved his chin. Seems to have worked for him based off of what happened in his last fight. Seemed like he could take a shot. But the lesson in Terrence McKinney for the organization is, I mean, they know it, but they'll take chances with certain guys that they may think can actually take the accelerated path. But if you don't build prospects up slowly, you risk losing them. Terrence McKinney was getting good fights, but fighting certain opponents at the wrong times. Drew Dober, Bonfim, and Esteban Rivabic had been on good streaks and added knockouts over McKinney to these runs. I feel like with less momentum on his opponent's sides and better game planning from Terrence McKinney in these fights, he could develop to a point where he wins all of them if he were to go back and do it, maybe in like 2 more years of development through the UFC, if he's taking the right path into the rankings. I think that Borschev is a good fight for him to win, because Borschev is a guy who had it all, and he lost all of his aura. He's 1-2-1 in his last 4. Losses to Chase Hooper and Tom Nolan. Chase Hooper, I think, dropped him on the feet with his boxing and looked like Charles Oliveira in this fight. Tom Nolan just won a decision over him. He drew with Nazim Sadikov, and I think that Nazim Sadikov, that's the question mark kick over Gabriel Bonfim, I think. He's actually pretty good, so I guess a draw could be worse. But he did have a dreadful decision win over James Lontop, who's no longer in the UFC anymore. I think that he's on a downturn personally, because we're all hyping up Slava Claus a lot. I think that Terrence McKinney can select the right shot, and he can put away Vyacheslav Borschev with a brutal KO. And I'm going to call that as an early prediction for this one. That's my boy, man. I rock with Terrence McKinney. Kattar versus Garcia. This is an amazing fight, man. Steve Garcia has been so under the radar throughout his career, and he's just been getting so many first-round finishes. I'm so glad that they're giving him a high-profile match for him to get into the rankings now. Even if it is just number 15, that's so hype. In Calvin Kattar's last 4 fights, if I were to ask you what his special abilities were as a fighter, what would you tell me? He came up as a solid boxer for this weight class, but has a flawed game that makes him a risk to himself on the ground, and not even a top 5 in boxing at featherweight in 2025. Steve Garcia uses the King Green patented hood style whenever he fights, and that's why he's so dangerous everywhere. Steve is a very nasty striker who hurts his opponents to make them not want to fight anymore. Most of his subs are fighters getting laced on the feet with ferocious kickboxing, and then allowing the grappling setup as a way to exit the cage they no longer want to be inside of. Garcia thinks of like every single possible way to hurt his opponent from whatever position they're in, like Doctor Strange. He does this for a second and then comes back, and then just throws whatever strike makes the most sense to cause the most damage. Calvin Kattar kind of likes to just stay still and watch, as we saw in the Yusuf Zalal fight. The first 2 rounds, he was just getting beat up, and watching Yusuf Zalal just do goofy stuff with his hands and punch him. And he had limited success whenever he did start being offensive, because Yusuf Zalal was just running away in that last round. The first 2, he was getting clipped, and they were trading in the phone booth, and the pocket exchanges. Yusuf Zalal was putting in that work, man. People are going to try to discredit him in that win. That was actually a good performance by him. He won that fight soundly. He beat up Calvin Kattar. Calvin Kattar is going to get beat up by Steve Garcia. I think that this fight is going to look like that GTA 5 Trevor Phillips mission where you're torturing. I think it's funny because we were just talking about it. The guy was from Azerbaijan, and you were like torturing him to try to get information for the Grand Theft Auto 5 FBI. Steve Garcia is like the king of all Apex prelim fighters. We could say it's someone like Melchizedek Costa at this weight class, just because of how good we saw him perform against Julian Erosa last weekend or a couple of weekends ago. But dude, Steve Garcia knocked him out brutally. All of your favorite staple prelim fighters who you're like, yeah, I know this guy, he's been around for a while. Steve Garcia's probably choked him out or made him bleed and made him tap or TKO'd him in the first round. This guy is an actual animal. So I'm glad that he's getting an opponent like Calvin Kattar. This is going to be his shot at becoming a major player at this weight class. And we need more high profile featherweights so that we can make more big fights in this weight class. Without Ilia Topuria there, we need more fighters. We need more fighters who are in featherweight. So mark it in your calendar, boys. July 12th, Calvin Kattar gets separated from his donkey, and I think it's going to happen in the first round. Kyler Phillips versus Vinicius Oliveira. This is actually a pretty good fight. July 19th, 2025, the last matchup that we're going to talk about. Of all the different ranked contenders they could have given Vinicius Oliveira to fight, they chose to give him the most boring one. A grappler who just got tuned up by Rob Font, who I thought should have fought Vinicius Oliveira instead. If we actually wanted more of a fight out of any matchup that could have been made with Rob Font and a guy in the rankings below him, I think that Vinicius Oliveira, sure, it doesn't make that much sense because Vinicius Oliveira is right at the bottom at 15 and Rob Font is like 8 or something. This is a free highlight reel showcase, and he would be eliminating Phillips in the rankings because they'd be swapping their 12 and 15 ranked positions and likely having someone else enter the rankings before Phillips fights again afterwards, like Aaron Pico. Font looked like a young contender against Phillips and totally controlled this fight with his boxing and his jab. I think the same jab that he used against Kyler Phillips could be replicated by Vinicius Oliveira. He's going to land his combinations with very good timing and off of lazy strikes that Kyler may throw at him. I'll look for this in the later rounds because Kyler Phillips does have a weird gas tank. I've noticed he gets tired. Vinicius Oliveira, he does get tired too, but he pushes, and I feel like he does his best work whenever he is tired. I speak about Vinicius Oliveira like he's Magnus Carlsen, the pro chess player, and I wanted to see him get a better opponent so he could showcase more of his striking, because there is a possibility that Kyler Phillips does just wrestle this guy, man. Kyler Phillips got really high in the rankings after winning against Raoni Barcelos and Pedro Munoz whenever it still meant a lot. Munoz is no longer in the top 15, and whenever I think about him, I have to Google whether or not he's in the UFC every time too. And Phillips may soon be joining him outside of the rankings in the inactive Pedro Munoz. Man, I got Oliveira via a flying 6-strike Muay Thai combo knockout in the first round. the opening 5 seconds of the match. So yeah, that's what I'm making of these fights that are going on throughout the summer. I'm very excited to see what the course of the organization has in store for us. So many people are going to get knocked out, and it's going to be important fights too, and they're going to end in knockout. I know it, man. I'm so excited, dude. I'm so excited. This summer is going to be amazing. So I'm going to be here reporting on the sport all summer, into the fall, into the winter, into the spring even. So please like, comment, and subscribe if you made it to this point. I will catch you fellas in the next one. Please have a wonderful day.